Wacker. He's the editor of the Spider-Man books.
Right.
As well as
Our returning champions are a couple straight from Birmingham. This is Leinil Yu. Woo! And, of course, Adi Granov.
And on the blue team, we have Kieron Gillen, writer of Uncanny X-Men, and artist extraordinary Braithwaite. Dead X-Men stuff and all that kind of stuff. Just loads of stuff. Too much to mention here. Welcome to the Breaking Into Comics the Marvel Way panel. We're really glad to see a full house out there. We were just downstairs looking through a bunch of portfolios because we're doing some portfolio reviews later. So we'll hopefully give you some tips for those who are and aren't going to get portfolio reviews from us. But the point of this panel is to try and give you guys a window in what it takes to break into comics as a Marvel freelancer. I'm just going to keep on talking.
Go for it.
There's good news and there's bad news. The good news is there's never been an easier time to make comics and to get your comics out in front of people. With things like digital media and the market being opened up because of the internet, you have a better way to meet other creators, to meet people, and to make actual comics yourself. The bad news is it's still incredibly hard to get paid to do that. It's still true. There's very few jobs and lots of people trying to get them. But hopefully when we talk here, we can help you guys figure out some tricks of the trade, some tools to do so. One thing that I'm going to steal from C.B. Cebulski, who regretfully can't be here, what we're going to do here is talk about how each of the gentlemen up here broke into comics. So to give you kind of a window into how they did it. But the sad thing is, it's getting into comics is kind of like getting out of prison. Once one person does it one way, that way is closed up immediately. But at least it can show you a method to do it, so you can make your own, and you can at least learn from mistakes they made and learn from mistakes they didn't make, and the things they did right to get into comics. Make sense? How's that? Good intro, everybody? Yeah! So, why don't we want to start? Doug, you want to start? Can you tell us how you broke into comics? How you got your first job and stayed in the business?
Yeah, gosh, it's going back a long time. I'm sure a lot of you know. But
It was 1935.
Yeah, maybe a bit later than that, but not too far off. 25 years ago now. But back then, the whole kind of market was completely different. There were a lot of licensed products out at the time. Marvel Code and lots of licensed comics. So there was a lot of opportunity for young talent to kind of get a break and get a foothold in the business and just to learn your trade. You used to get small 8-page stories that you could work on, which was perfect for me as a young boy. So I did that for probably about three or 4 years, on and off, and then you jump onto other projects. People see your work, and gradually kind of built up contacts that way. But 87 was a weird time because it was a kind of big boom. A lot was happening, a lot of exciting stuff happening. It's just after the Dark Knight comic had just come out, and a lot of that kind of there's a lot of energy around in the comics business. And Marvel UK had started doing licensed work for the first time for a long time, and there was a lot of product, Action Force, Thundercats, some TV licensed stuff, and it was just great to have the opportunity to just work on small little stories back then, and build up your confidence. But things have changed a bit more since then. But I'm sure the rest of the guys will explain this.
Had you gone through the process of portfolio reviews at conventions and sending your stuff in?
I was very lucky. I had a lot of good people around me. I started very young. I was 17 when I first worked professionally, I actually went to Marlborough UK when I was 15. I had some very good teachers at my school who saw my potential as a comic strip artist. I used to love just drawing full stop. I love drawing, painting, anything. I do whatever the teacher told me to do. But one English teacher saw my work and my comic strip work. I just do margins at lunchtime. And he saw my work and said, you know, you could do this professionally if you wanted to. And back then I never really thought. Because the comics I used to read were American comics, basically. I didn't really think there was any outlet for me as a young UK guy. You know, I didn't really know much about 2000 AD. So with his help, he got me set up to, there's a course at London Cartoon Centre at the time that was being taught by Dave Lloyd. And I went along there for about 6 or 7 months. So I learned the basics there. That was a great experience. You had professionals coming in and showing you original artwork from the 60s and 70s. It just blew my mind. I was like a sponge. I wanted to absorb as much information as possible. And yeah, after about 6 or 7 months, I just got a portfolio. And when I thought I was ready, I kind of a bit cheeky actually, because Dave Lloyd told me I wasn't ready, and then a week later I got a portfolio together and went off my own back and went to Marvel. And I took my stuff in, and yeah, they accepted me, so I haven't really looked back. As a very cool, I look back on my work now, and there's a lot of rough edges, but you had a lot of good people around me.
So I think Dougie's advice is to break in 1987.
Well, that was back then, but the same thing applies now, though.
It does.
It does, absolutely.
Yeah, if you've got the talent, if you've got the drive, I was very determined to kind of break in. And I did have knockbacks, I had rejection slips from a few other people I might mention. But I was determined, it's something I really wanted to do. So when I actually got that break, I didn't let go. Yeah.
The drive and persistence.
Yeah, you have to be persistent. I mean, you have to have that passion. It's something you love. I mean, I'm sure you all love comics. Obviously, you wouldn't be here otherwise. But it just felt like it was the right thing for me. I needed to do it.
So now the one man on the panel that actually killed someone to get into comics.
Seven.
Kieron.
Yeah.
Kieron Gillen, everybody.
Former assassin.
I'm actually very excited my microphone's finally working. I actually came to comics properly as an adult, in that I read it as a kid and stopped reading as a teenager in favour of doing very little. And I just sort of rediscovered comics and found immediately like an adult love affair. It was like walking into, imagine never listening to music until you're like 25 and suddenly realise there's shops full of these things. So I got into comics, and 6 months later I went to my first con and I wrote my first script. And that little echoey voice behind me, can everyone else hear that? Or is that just me? I've got like satanic voices in my head.
And that's your voice.
That's true. It's like a weird mystery type takeover's going on. And that's how I got in. I just started doing. And this is the great job about comics, is the entry level to actually creating is the pen and paper. I could do one here, as I pick this up and a pen over there, and abstractly, that's the comic. But what I didn't, and I just started doing web comics. I did small press stuff in cons like this, and I did that for like best parts of 5 years. And to be honest, I did a couple of like small work for hire things, like I did a Warhammer 40k comic. I did an editorial comic for a short PlayStation magazine, stuff like that. But all that was really just about working with the craft. So I really desperately knew I was not good enough. I had no interest in. But that's kind of like what if you take one thing from my story, is don't really worry about the pitching, as in like really work out, am I good enough? And ask yourself honestly and generally work on the craft. And not in a self-hating way, but being a real understanding of what you're actually trying to do and what kind of work you want to put out there. Eventually I got to a point where I thought I wasn't shit, and I had basically I did a book through Image called Phonogram. Phonogram was a book I did with Jamie McKelvey. Jamie had done some work with me previously actually asked us to pitch it at them. So it's one of those weird cases. They actually solicited a pitch because they'd seen my small press work, they knew me because I was also a critic and a general sort of journalist in other media. And then you'd seen Jamie's work previously on a book called Long Hot Summer. So it's kind of like, we weren't a complete unknown bet. Also, Eric Stevenson is an enormous Anglophile, and Phonogram is a comic about British pop music. So it's like which pitching of the right editor. That came out, got, incredibly good reviews for a book, a black and white comic by two British nobodies. And that was kind of ended up being my calling card, as it got me a reputation, and editors started talking to me. In terms of Marvel, my very lucky break, to be honest, is Warren Ellis was doing his new Universal book, and they were doing a variety of tie-ins. And he basically wanted to just choose some, younger writers specifically for each of these specials. And he said, I want you to do this 1950s book. And somehow thought Marvel was letting me do it. And it's the kind of like James Ellroy take on 1950s superheroes. And that was kind of Phonogram, as well received as it wasn't really a book that showed you could write anything other than stupid hipster scum smoking cigarettes and pretending to be cool. Whilst this was very much more something that actually showed understanding of the tropes and the genre and stuff. And from that, other Marvel editors started asking me for work, or not asking me for work, asking me for pictures, and it was a few small jobs, which led to a slightly more, 8-page story leads to a 1-issue story, leads to a 3-issue mini, leads to, and by the enormous achievement of not messing any of them up too badly, they set the ability to trust. And my big real break was being asked to take over Formal after JMS left, which essentially led to everyone since. I like to bring Nick in, as in what made you ask me to pitch to you?
Well, it was actually, part of it was some networking work that you'd done, because I was out in San Diego for the Comic-Con, and we were having an X-Men summit afterwards, and Matt Fraction was just coming on to Uncanny, and the two of us went to a comic shop in LA, and he actually bought me a copy of Phonogram. He's like, you should read this. These guys are really good. And I read it, and I really liked it, and I was trying to think, again, this is like what you said, it was a really good comic, and I saw there's something special in there, but then you did that one-shot, the Universal one-shot with John Barber that was like, okay, there's two things that he can do really well, and there's a good chance that there's more than that.
And then the first thing you asked me to do was a Dazzler strip, wasn't it?
Yep.
Which is I was using that when I was doing interviews as like an indie creator. You always get asked what superhero do you want to write, and I love superheroes. It's not really a question I want to do in an interview when I'm trying to publicise a book, which is not about that. As in, I want to try to elegantly move the conversation back about buying my stuff. And my preparedness, obviously Dazzler. It's a music comic. It's an easy gag. It gets a laugh, and we move on. The problem being, you start thinking about Dazzler in the back of your head, and you end up with story ideas. And it's just.
And part of it, a big part of it, there's two parts. Just going out there and doing it yourself is a great way to show that you can do it, because it's kind of like chatting someone up in a bar. It's hitting on someone in a bar. The more eager you seem, and the more you're like, you want to go on a date with me, right? Like, the less that's going to actually happen. Like, the better thing is if you want them to approach you. You want to make it so they approach you. And what happened there was you had enough people pushing, like saying, this guy's good, to be a matter of, we went after you. There was never a point where Kieron sent me anything.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever I'm lying. I cold pitched one thing, which was the story I did for Games Workshop, just a one-off, so I just thought, it sounds funny, and they said yes, so great. But apart from that, I've never pitched anything without being asked for a pitch. It's like, I just concentrate on the work, and having it out there has made people go, you're interested. And
that's going to end up, I think, being the message of every breaking in panel you go to from now on, which is, you don't need to wait around for Marvel and DC, and at a certain point, there's so much competition, you're almost, I don't want to say wasting your time, but you're making it more difficult than you need to, always sending stuff into the bigger companies, the Marvel, the DCs, even the Dark Horses. You all live in a time now, we struggle and we benefit from the change coming in digital. The great thing about comics now is that everyone here can leave and go make a comic book, and by the end of the day, it could be seen by other people in the world, which 25 years ago was a foreign idea.
Yeah. The most
There's
you
no
can do.
reason not to go make your comics.
The thing about pitching is that you know, unless you're incredibly lucky and quite rich, you're probably working another job. So I was working full time and also doing my stuff in the evening, and wasn't really ruining my relationships. But that's beside the point. But
We're here for you.
I love you, man. But if you actually just concentrate on pitching stuff, as in stories which essentially somebody else gives you permission to tell, you're spending all your time pitching stuff and not actually working on the craft at all. In that kind of way, the time you spend pitching to people who are not necessarily interested in you for reasons beyond your knowledge is time you're not learning to write or time you're not learning to draw or whatever. And that's for when that your time is so precious, and it really is incredibly precious. I just work, get work, do work. Work is important. Yeah.
So let's keep going. The man who slept his way to the top.
With you.
With me. It was a horrible scene, if you can imagine it. Adi, how did you come to our attention?
To Marvel's attention?
Or I guess, how did you break it?
I worked at Nintendo straight out of college. I got a job at Nintendo, and
Did you study art in college?
illustration. I wanted to be a poster artist. That was kind of the thing. But Nintendo approached me. They liked my stuff, and I worked there for 2 years, which kind of built up my portfolio pretty much. And then after that, other companies just started offering work. That was it. CB from Marvel just emailed me one day and said, "Do you want to do some work for us?" So I never really broke into
The editors found you.
Yeah, and it was all over the internet because my work ended up online, and they started seeing it somehow. I never really knew how CB.
Did you ever set up a website or anything to show off your work?
Yeah, and internet forums, and I think that's a really big tool these days. There are, I'm not sure right now, but when I was really getting into it about 10, 12 years ago, there were a lot of art forums, and it was a new medium, and everybody was posting their art. I mean, it was a way of being published without having to be published. You just start a thread with your art in it, and it really blew up, and suddenly there was thousands of people, memberships, and at some point the editors from the companies started noticing it as well, and I know that a lot of people got hired in video games and film and comics just through forums. So you don't even have to publish a thing on paper, you just publish it online and people see it. Yeah.
How many artists are here today? And is everyone, if anyone isn't showing, going to the art forums, and can you think of the names of them now?
Like DeviantArt?
DeviantArt, yeah.
I mean, the one at the time doesn't exist anymore, but the one that was the big one, and that's the one that a lot of people around that time posted, was called Eat Poo. And and it existed, and it had, I don't know, dozens of thousands of members.
Yeah.
And it started kind of as a small, I mean, the guy who started it created the name because he wanted to keep a lot of people out of it, but it just spread like wildfire. and through that, and I mean, it was kind of one of those things where, like, do you say to people, "Oh yeah, I got my job through Eat Poo," you know?
Oh, God.
But I don't know.
Please don't let that be a quote that comes out of this. Like, Adi Granov said to eat poo to get jobs.
I don't know where I was now.
Oh, shit.
We're talking about eating poo.
That's right.
All right. And Leinil, what's your secret origin?
Hello. I think I broke in 12 years ago. At first, I was sending in letters to, submissions, mailing them in through snail mail to Homage Studios, Wildstorm, and Dark Horse. I actually got a few letters back. They're not form letters, so it was a good sign. The internet was still in its very infancy stage back then. Only a few people had email addresses. So I kind of knew I had something to work with, and it's not just a delusion. So I kept at it, and then Will Sportasio, you guys know him, right? Wetworks and Mechanics, man.
Yeah.
And he's a Filipino American. He came to the Philippines to scout for some talent. And I was one of the guys who sent in work, sent in samples. And at first he hated my work because I was really trying hard to copy him. It was really bad copies, and he just hated it. But Leinil Yu, who's my inker now, actually was one of the first people he hired, and he kind of bugged Wills to get me. And we weren't friends back then, but he was he gave me a chance, and so we were supposed to do some work for Wildstorm. We were supposed to do some like a satellite studio for Wildstorm, but that was a time when the comic book industry was sliding down. It was there wasn't any books being produced, so I stopped school. I was taking up advertising in college, and during the second year I stopped and I went and I just went into Will's studio, but there wasn't any work, so I was for a year I wasn't doing anything. I was just sitting, just playing video games and stuff inside the studio.
And drawing, I hope. At least drawing for yourself, or
a little bit.
Oh
we're
my
trying
gosh.
to practice and stuff, but
This
we're
is the worst message I've ever heard.
No. So we're just I was pretending to work. Like my parents were giving me some money to, So there was a point in time where I thought it was a wrong decision. We weren't doing anything. I did a few backgrounds in Iron Man Reborn. Heroes Reborn. It was just a very little work, and I thought I made a wrong decision because we were still waiting to work for Wacker. And then Will took my work to Marvel at San Diego Comic-Con. He coached Mark Powers, the editors back then, and Jason Leapig. And wow. And,
It's helpful to have another creator vouching for
big time.
Yeah, because
I've already worked with Wilson. I like Wilson.
Yeah, because if I screw up, we'll have to draw the comics himself. So it was I owe him a lot, and they gave me the number 4 book right then and there. It was great. It was just a lot of luck involved too, and good timing.
Well, a very inspiring tale about paying your dues.
But I have to say, I've been drawing since I was a kid, so it's.
I think what Leinil illustrates, and this is particularly true of artists, how things change so often. For decades in comics, from the 30s till the 70s or so, you were up against just other artists in the New York community. And then through the 80s, you started being up against other artists who were mostly from England or around the United States. And then the internet has exploded in the 90s up till now. You're now in competition with everyone in the world, where a guy playing video games in the Philippines gets on the number 4 book because we can now find this talent around the world. And editing has become a 24-hour job because of that, because of the time differences. But it just, I think it's raised the level of quality in a lot of the books. And it's also, for people trying to break in, everyone else has to raise their game a little bit.
But isn't it true that, you guys, it's quality always over anything else?
Yeah.
So you can forgive a lot of stuff, or
We do.
Well, I know. but you can have any kind of, you can give any kind of tricks how to get into the industry, but in the end it's the quality that will get you into any sort. It's not just comics. It's in my experience.
I think there's probably very few really great artists who want to work in comics who don't get the opportunity to do it. They might louse it up once they're there, but we are trying to find people. Same with DC, same with 2000 AD, I'm sure. Trying to find these people everywhere.
If someone's really bad, no matter what kind of tricks they use to get into the industry,
It's going to be hard to laugh at. They might get the first job.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The second one.
Absolutely.
Oh, they can trace, yes.
So, again, more inspiring advice. All right, I guess we can open it up. We have a microphone who can run around like Oprah.
You get a car.
Everyone look into the chair. So, we have any questions for anyone on the panel or for Nick? Hopefully not for Leinil.
Yeah, Gary over there.
Up to you.
Absolutely.
Hey, alright, how's it going? I was just wondering, do you know with the reviews today, the portfolio reviews, how many people, like what percentage would you find artists through that procedure?
The question was, what percentage do we find artists through portfolio reviews?
Yeah.
I mean, through some form of portfolio review. I mean, a lot of times now, the way that the modern way of portfolio reviews is more through emails and things like that. They go through our talent managers and stuff like that. But I mean, when you go to a convention, maybe one, maybe two out of every convention might get a shot, but a lot of times not even one. Like it's pretty rare like that at a convention you walk, but it does happen. I mean, I've hired from San Diego Con last year. There were 2 guys that I hired for short stories. After that, but the previous convention I went to, there was nobody that I hired.
Mostly what you're looking, Nick and I just went through about 200 portfolios, and there were people who had dropped off today. And mostly what we're looking for at that point is someone we think has a bit of a skill that we can sort of advise or give advice to or steer in some direction or give some notes to. It's very rare that we're looking for someone who we can walk away and say, you, get that job right now.
Yeah.
So hopefully there's someone with enough talent.
No, I was just saying, when you do find somebody, do you give them a whole 22-page story, or do you give them a short story?
Usually it's an 8-page story, if
Right,
anything. I mean, but what Steve hits is like neither of us came here with a script that we're gonna hire someone on the spot. That's not what we're looking to do is foster talents that we see and try to give people hopefully some advice that might help them take that next step and get there, and that sort of thing.
And what we have at Marvel, when we see someone who's got some chops and they just need to sort of exercise their talent a little bit, we have a library of sort of inventory scripts that our talent managers have, and it's all for samples. It's not for paid work, but it gives you the chance to work off an actual script, see how you interpret it. It'll get your work. Those samples are then sent around to the editors of Marvel. So it's a chance.
And one thing about this portfolio review process today, like Steve said, we went through about 200 portfolios downstairs, and we picked out enough to fill our 2 hours after this panel. But one thing I want to say, like in a lot of them, if we didn't pick you, if we picked you, you'll be getting a call. If we didn't pick you, chances are you need to work on your anatomy and your perspective. I honestly, like most of the portfolios, people were still, their anatomy is not right, their perspective, like those are very basic things you need to master.
Very basic, probably two of the most difficult things.
Incredibly difficult, but if you don't have that, then the rest falls apart. Then you don't have anything at that point. So you really got to do that. So that's, if you don't get picked, take that as your portfolio review right now. Next question.
One thing about portfolio is generally, viewers work, I don't know, you don't put anything, you think it's all bad in there.
Yeah.
And how many pages would you say got a portfolio?
No, I would say no more than 8.
Exactly.
No more than 8 pages, like Kieron said. No more than 8 pages. Only put your best stuff in there. If you see anything wrong with anything you're putting in there, if you don't think it puts your best foot forward, don't put it in there. Because we'll certainly.
If you have a page that you have to explain why it's not as good as it could be, that's a page to take out. Because that's the last thing we have time for and want to hear is why you weren't able to do this page as well as you think you were able to.
And
But yeah, that stuff in there.
unfinished stuff, I always see unfinished stuff.
Yeah,
that happened a lot today, actually.
You know, the fact that you're showing it, it's not a good sign.
Sometimes at that point, I don't mind seeing unfinished work, because you can see the work comes out, you can see the thought processes underneath sometimes, and you know, you can see the talent shown through. So I understand what you're saying. I think, yeah, it's good to, when you're showing your work to an editor, it's always good to have finished pieces. You know, small, short page, small stories through 2-3 pages, you know, right through to the end. Sorry, Chris.
So I think it's a difference between showing your portfolio to an artist and showing it to an editor. As in, they're different jobs. With artists, you don't
editors, we've heard a lot about how writers break in, how artists break in, and what their kind of development process is. But how did you, the editors, break in? And what are your particular qualifications, or what's your skill set?
I was playing Halo online with Leinil.
We're having something with Adi.
Yeah. Nick was an intern.
Yeah.
Were you an intern at Marvel?
I did an internship at Marvel. I tried. Marvel does unpaid internships all year round. You get college credit for them. But I tried in between my second and third year at college, and I did not get an internship. And then I tried again in between my third and fourth, and I got an internship and worked my butt off, making no money and barely getting by in New York City. Endeared myself to some editors there in the time. And it's exactly what you think it means. They told me to send in my resume when I knew I was going to graduate, and I did, and I started work at Marvel 2 days after I graduated university. I've been there, it'll be 9 years in May. I started off as an editorial assistant there. When I was in college, I majored in drama and acting. It was a liberal arts school, so I did acting class, but I also took English classes. But a lot of it there's your skill sets. You have to be a people person. You have to know how to talk to people. You have to have a good sense of story. Know what you're looking for, and for me, I think that was what acting and being in plays was. It was about telling stories and eliciting emotion from people, which is really what storytelling is about in a lot of ways. But it was hard work because our days are insanely fast-paced and busy. Steve and I both, on a monthly basis, put out usually from 9 to 12 or more books a month. That we're editing, each with their own creative teams, with people we have to be in contact with all the time. We get over probably 500 emails a day that we have to process through and all that kind of stuff, and read 4 scripts a day oftentimes. But you have to be a workhorse. You have to know how to talk to people. You have to know how to treat people well, and how to get work out of people who may not be the best at getting work done.
And not send wrong reference.
Not send wrong reference.
That's yeah.
Yes.
All right.
All the time. It's like a big of my existence.
I thought Batman was Iron Man. I got confused.
Steve, you want to talk?
I completely fell into it. I was working at the Associated Press in New York, and I had also written a show about superheroes that had played off Broadway in New York for a couple of years. And the show was on at one point, and a bunch of editors from DC Comics came. They kept coming to the show, and after several months, they asked me if I wanted to interview for an assistant editor job. So I just went in, I interviewed, and got it. And I worked at DC for 6 years. I've been at Marvel almost 5. That's an odd way.
I don't I don't know an editor that didn't have an odd way. Axel Alonso was a journalist before, starting at Vertigo as an assistant editor.
What was wrong?
What's that?
Ralph Macchio's been at Marvel since he was 6 years old. Ralph just celebrated his 35th year at Marvel.
Yeah, Ralph wrote letters into letters pages and was an English major and just got to know the editors through letter writing.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Tom Greenwood was a cabaret singer. True.
Are you frustrated writers?
Say again?
Are you frustrated writers?
I can't
Are
understand.
you frustrated by it?
No. I'm a thrilled writer. Right. We should go over here a little bit too, I think. Oh, Clark Kent has a microphone. Where'd you get that? Oh.
I don't think there was one. I've got 2 questions really. Firstly, you mentioned about small presses. So is there any in particular that we should be looking to try and get into contact with before we go to the major companies? And secondly, just to try to guilt trip you guys, I got a train at 5 o'clock this morning from Glasgow to get here to show you some portfolio. Didn't get here in time. Are you looking at portfolios again tomorrow?
Yeah, we'll be doing it again tomorrow. Same
Yeah,
time.
it's a drop-off situation.
Yeah, that's right. I just wanted to
Can
make
you
sure.
ask who are the small presses?
Yes.
go for all of them. Like whichever one that you can get a job with. Like if you can get paid, no matter what, how little at first, like doing it professionally is the best way you're going to get experience. Like when you need to hit a deadline and get working. Countless small presses. But
I think at the small press level, you're not going to get paid. You're going to have to do your own book, and you may have to even pay for the price of printing. And there's some, every company has their own sort of deal. But all of those sort of things are obstacles you can throw in front of yourself to stop you from working. You don't need to wait to put your comic together. If someone sends me samples in the mail of a comic that they did, of a comic story, even if it's stapled themselves, I'll take a look at it on the train. I will read comics. We legally in Marvel can't read pitches. I certainly don't have time to read scripts because I've got enough that I have to get out anyway. But as a writer, that's the impediment with the bigger companies, is that the law has become so stiff that we can't look at pitches without getting a bunch of legal things signed. But if you've got the story, if you've got the comic story, and it's your own thing, there's nothing stopping you from putting it out.
I mean, on the writer side, as you said, there's no way they're going to read scripts, so getting work, it's much. Writing a script is one thing. The second, you have a script drawn by anybody, and it doesn't matter. And when you're just starting off, it's going to be similar people in a similar position. You've somehow twisted their arm to the script. But that teaches you so much. I remember the second comic I ever did. It was 8 panels on the page, and one of the panels involved somebody throwing a load of photos on the floor. This is like a punchline, there's this emotional bit. This is how much good a time I'm having. And it works dramatically, etc., etc. But there's 12 Polaroids, and each one had a different image on it. And the artist quite rightly told me to fuck off and just did the shape of the Polaroids. And from that one thing, I would have never learned that from doing the script. So for the writers, by doing scripts, A, you learn, B, you get the work out there so people can actually look at it. And it's not even editors to begin with, it's your central peers. And after I had one story out, which was a little 5-page webcomic thing, other artists said, that would be, we should do a story together sometime. And that kind of load, so you just end up sort of building up by, as I said, inside Marvel, there's this 8-page thing that's been bigger and bigger. My entire writing career for the small press on was essentially doing work which leads to more work, and even if some paid work. And of course, the thing with the writer, don't make 3 pages to 5-page stories if you're trying to get people to do it for free. As in, they won't do it. In fact, even my first things I did was 10 or 11 5-page stories. And they all had artists, and less than half of them got actually finished. Which sounds bad, but no, that's a week's work for an artist. You've got to completely understand that most artists will flake on you, and that's fine as well, because that does learn you some very people skills sort of stuff. And I'm not a very people skill person, I'm violent.
Yeah, he's terrible.
That's I much prefer violence, hence the medium. It does, it's all growing and learning experience, especially working with an artist is magical, as in kind of what you get back as well. And that at no point is going to circles, I'm stopping you.
Find somebody you can collaborate.
Yeah, it's like me and Jamie, we just, I feel magical and lucky. And the only reason I met Jamie is because we're both doing small press stuff. And my shared aesthetic preferences, we ended up sort of gravitating together. So yeah, it's magical.
Cool.
Hello. I started reading comics in the early 90s. It was very niche, very boys club. It was all good. But now comics are a lot more diverse and a lot more prevalent in the culture thanks to the great movies you guys do. You pick great directors, brilliant stuff. And I was wondering, I was wondering, not in a positive discrimination kind of way, but has that given you a more ambition to be more culturally diverse in the sense of the writers and the creators you use, so you can tell different kinds of stories? Like when you go to a film festival and you see so many different types of films from different countries and different spins and perspectives on certain types of tales. It'd be brilliant to just walk into a comic shop and see a whole rack of Marvel comics with some, stories set in the Philippines, because as you said, you're hiring creators from different countries, but it'd be brilliant if they could tell comic stories from their perspectives, because I think as a reader, I like reading different types of cultures and their perspective and stuff. It's a good story, like the best thrillers now from Korea. It would be interesting if we had that kind of thing in comics, because we kind of seen a sort of like a very male, very white, perspective on the world, and I want to see maybe a different type of gaze. I think Marvel did a brilliant job when they had the Women from Marvel section. You had Kapow and that was really cool. But maybe if you're ambitious to tell more kind of stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have a pretty darn culturally diverse stable of talent. I would say I'm pretty proud of that. Working for Marvel, we have people from all over the world working with us and telling stories. So that's something that I feel like we do rather well right now. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to find like we have people from just about every continent, from many countries, and we try to represent as much culturally and as we can. I mean, as far as setting stories, places, and that kind of thing. Like a lot of our choices are business driven, and we go by what sells. At the end of the day, we were recently bought by Disney, but we still we're the same way we used to be. We're still very much a budget driven company. We need to make money to keep the lights on and such. So a lot of times, like as much as we'd like to do to put out comics about these different places, we're kind of hamstrung by the fact that we need to make money, and those things don't always sell that well. We try to do things that fill those niches, and we're trying to do it through our creators from everywhere.
I think we're probably stronger in terms of culturally diverse talent in the art area than we are in the writer area, because our writers tend to be from either the US or the UK, and that's simply an effect of the language. But when we go to other countries and cons, we try to talk about it, because I love the idea of opening up the world, and I think we've gotten better. It's always hard to do it when that's your goal. Here are a bunch of culturally diverse comics, and they all seem like a special message. And inevitably we screw up the flag or something, and then it all gets messed up. But I think in terms of our storytelling, you're going to see more and more that we're trying to open up the world a little bit more. And we do have stories set on the moon. Very diverse.
Try to destroy a city other than New York for a change.
No.
The fact that you're not doing anything.
Well, we also have Brooklyn.
Queens, right?
We have Queens and San Francisco. There was here, and I want to get somebody in the middle too.
I'm figuring between you guys, you've obviously seen a lot of. Oh, I've come on. Sorry, didn't realize. I figure between you guys, you've obviously seen a lot of portfolios, pitches, and scary people cornering you at conventions and trying to sell you on ideas. Are there any suggestions you've got for things to very specifically avoid doing? Primarily from a writer's point of view, but also from an artist's point of view.
From a writer, I mean, writers do have a harder path, just because their craft is harder to quickly evaluate. It takes a lot more work. I mean, from writers, kind of what we said before: get your work drawn. Absolutely, like handing us a script is basically pointless. Like we're almost never going to have time to read a script that isn't something we're paying for. That isn't a book we're putting out. Like always have things drawn and lettered and put together in the form of a comic and get your work out there. Cold pitches again are pretty pointless. We have most of our books are spoken for, but so we'll go after writers in a lot of ways to pitch, knowing of having a vague sense of what we need, what we want. Coming up to me with a great idea for a Banshee story. As much as I love Banshee, it's probably not going to go anywhere for you. But get your work drawn, get your work lettered, put it together, and then send that to a comic company.
But do make the note that Nick loves Banshee.
Sure.
It is like Nick says. I can tell in an instant if an artist has it or not. For writers, having an idea for a great Wolverine story, a great Banshee story, that's kind of the easy part. And talking me up about it at a con doesn't change the fact that when I get back to the office, I can call Kieron Gillen, or I can call Andy Diggle or Dan Slott if I need a story. That's your replicates. With writers, more and more, I will trust someone based on the word of someone else. If another writer will say, they've worked with this person, they know this writer, otherwise, it's so labor intensive, and the whole idea situation, and people might think that you're stealing their idea. I just don't want to hear ideas so that you can't sue me later. If I have a story that also has Wolverine fighting somebody, and you say, I came up with Wolverine fighting somebody. I hate to say it's more trouble than it's worth, but it's sometimes more trouble than we can realistically deal with. And frankly, if you can write, I want to see a comic book that you've written, not that you can think of a Spider-Man idea. I sounded harsher than I meant.
But it's also disastrous for a good story to be drawn by a bad artist, though. It could also harm you. So
keep going until you can convince a good artist to draw. Like you can get to that point.
I didn't do phonogram immediately. The first 5 years, phonogram came in 2006. I was writing comics since 2000. My first, those small 5-page things were primarily formalist, and they were short stories, but they're like, can I write a comic? And then how is a comic for? How can you use irony? How can this panel effect work? Does this panel effect work? Answer no. So it's like when the craft got to the stage, I felt the ability to write essentially a novel, because that's what phonogram was. And I was in the position with the right artist to do that novel. And tailoring the stuff to the artist you have is also important in that kind of way. Does that make sense? It's very more like, even with an artist who's not incredibly competent, you can write to their strengths and do something that works in the context of a small press, and then you just don't show it to editors. Or, the idea that what you can get out of that situation, and if it's a bad script, you hopefully have other stuff out there anyway, in that kind of, does that make it? Getting work, it's kind of like, and it's the PA thing as well, so yeah. And especially in the context of the very small press, that's the black and white photocopic stuff, the standards really are much lower in terms of presentation and stuff, and you're working in a fairly safe environment of essential people who are very similar to you and who are often aren't, incredibly artistically vibrant. They're not going to be on magazine covers, but this is a very supporting environment. That's the thing. Just doing comics, put them in a zine, went out there, sort of had a table at a con like this. You meet so many people, and you build bonds and all that kind of stuff. So just do something, and do something, be there and put yourself out there, and as long as you don't accidentally vomit on them. I was actually seriously, don't get drunk and embarrass yourself in front of an editor. Not even joking. Don't do socially inappropriate. Don't talk in the toilet. I've known writers who've completely done that.
Go ahead.
You mentioned obviously getting new comics out there, small press, and obviously just getting the stuff out there has been the best way to break in. But once you've got that book out, small press, what's the best way of getting it noticed by Marvel and something like that? Is it worth sending?
I don't know what the best way is, but with anything that you've written or drawn, get it to. It's just a process of keep getting it to people. Getting people that are in the business. If you can get another freelancer to look at it, if you can find an editor that can look at it. I don't know what the best way is.
Yeah.
I have a online friend who just started doing comics about her everyday life, and she did them for about 6 months, a year, and it just kind of spread from about 10 people reading it to hundreds of people reading, and finally Image approached her to publish it. And
that's awesome.
It came out as a graphic novel of just short, each page is a day of her life. And it's just about her, and kind of it's all very surreal. It's more about her thoughts in her mind. But it's just kind of spread because of the quality, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, and I think even with writing, spreads, and if people start talking about it and then people notice it and it gets published.
Boy, I think that's a great story. It's corny, but being good at the job is better than becoming great at being a glad with it. That sounds like a piece of work that just sort of spread based on the quality.
Completely, yeah. She was doing it just for herself, really. And I think it was, I don't want to speak for her or anything, but I think her boyfriend broke up with her. She kind of started drawing out of frustration, and it just over a year just spread.
Well, we've all been there.
The joy is creation. You should be wanting to do it whether you break it or not. It's one of those kind of things.
Let's do one more really fast. Just one for one of the artists. Art, quick question. Yeah.
Hi. I just just wonder, the seminar's been a lot about breaking in and being able to work commercially. But also I just like for one of the artists then to say, what is it that makes an artist who could have been in advertising or in some other kind of art form to actually want to create in this medium? Yeah, why comics? Why write for comics and not for TV or for something else? Why draw for comics? To have some kind of also a little beautiful thought to end this seminar as well.
For me, it's storytelling, first and foremost. I love narration. I love to tell a story without words. I mean, when I'm drawing a comic, I'm visualizing it like a film. I mean, I've worked in advertising, I've done storyboarding. I've worked where I've supported in different fields. But I always get drawn back to comics because it's only where I can feel like I can express myself. Storytelling wise. That's it, that's all I can say really.
Unique, magical, progressive medium. Still, the underdog aspect really appeals to me. You'll never write Ulysses. In comics, the canon is still being created. You have the chance to generally shape and be novel and new. I like new things. There's the space to just not just be really, really good, but actually generally help the medium forward one way or another. So yeah, you can play to very high stakes and generally the world hates. It's all about being the X-Men, basically. You have to protect the world even if it hates and hates you. So comics.
It's much more satisfying working in comics. I've worked in a few movies and it's a lot of fun, but there's 100 people above you that you have to please, and it's all about micromanaging. And in comics, it's all about, it's all about the final product and how to get it out there as quick as possible without too much interference from editorial or from. So basically, it's the shortest kind of line between what's in my mind to what's on the shelf. While in the movies or the video games, you have to, do a sketch, and then it has to go through a panel of people who all have to, give their opinion. Then you have to go back and you have to, redo it, and then so it becomes. It's not really art anymore. It's more kind of like a frustrating process of trying to squeeze something out. And then at the end, it's not your art that's being up there. Like in Iron Man, it's 3 different people who put their art together, and then it was 10 other people who gave their opinion about it, and then what's on screen is kind of barely recognizable to what I originally drew down, put down. While in comics, what I draw today is going to be on the shelves in, a month or whatever.
That's great.
And that's
that direct line.
For me, it's just a lot of fun, and it's a product of the stuff I watched when I was growing up. I was watching a lot of cartoons and stuff. I'd also love to produce movies or animations and stuff, but comics is the easiest to do. I can't do a movie that fast, and I can't do animation. If I could animate something myself, I would. It's always better to have a punch animated with all the blood splatting out, but I'm only one person, so I can only draw one panel, and that's comic books, and it's a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.